Hey, this is Meridith Elliott Powell, and you know what time it is. It is 9 a.m. Eastern, Saturday morning, a Labor Day weekend. I hope everybody's set for a great holiday weekend. It's time for Sales Logic. So, Mark, even though it is a holiday weekend, we've got some good stuff to discuss this week, right?
We got some good stuff, and that means there's a lot of golf and tennis on the docket for you. But hey, the topic today, inside sales, outside sales rep. What are the skills, support, and success that you need? And hey, we got a great question, great book that I just ordered off of Amazon about 5 minutes ago. And the lightning round. Look, let me go and tease the audience. Top 10 ways sales leaders can support sales reps who do inside and or outside sales work. So, hey, great show.
All right, let's get started.
Prospect with integrity, we will get customers who have integrity. Integrity is the foundation from which everything is built on.
You better understand value. But at the end of the day, sales is a relationship business. It is a people business. It is an emotional business.
This is Sales Logic.
This is Sales Logic, the show where we dive into the strategies, discuss the steps, everything that you need to know to sell more effectively. Mark's going to give you a rundown of how the show is going to work today, but I'm going to give you an outline of how you can get engaged and involved. We always love that the comment section lights up during Sales Logic, so engage there. If you ever have a question, reach out to saleslogicpodcast.com. Every week we cover a hot topic. We entertain a question from you, the audience. We recommend a book, and we leave you with a lightning round, strategies that you can put into place immediately. So, Mark, where are we starting today?
Well, like I said, the topic is inside sales, outside sales rep, the skills, the support, the success to make it happen. But let's dive first into the question. The question comes from Corey. Corey, I can't quite get the pronunciation of your last name right, so we'll just leave it at that, Corey. And her question is, I'm about to begin the transition from an inside sales role to an outside sales role. What advice do you have? What differences can I expect?
Yeah, really, really good question, right? Corey, there is so much you need to focus on and so many things you need to do. First of all, congratulations. I imagine that this is an opportunity that you have wanted and maybe a role that's coming with a little bit more opportunity and a little bit of salary and experience growth for you. But I would say that number one, there are some generalities that sales reps, outside sales reps have across all industries, but you need to get to know specifically for your industry and your company what's going to work. So I would spend some time shadowing and mentoring some of the most successful outside reps in your organization. Kind of get to learn the best from the best and some of the ropes as to what they're doing really well.
And along with that, when you move from inside to outside, when you're inside, your time is really much more structured. Outside, your time is not as structured. So, Corey, one of the things that you have to make the leap to is that you control your time much more than you realize. And this means you have to be very mindful of what are those down activities versus those active activities. What do I mean? What do I mean by that? It's very easy to sit there and say, and I remember I got chewed on this by one of my first bosses, because I was outside sales and I had this appointment. It was great. And I drove an hour to get to that outside appointment and drove back. And then 3 days later, I did it again. And man, my boss jumped me. He said, you're wasting time. You're wasting time. I thought I was being very active by getting involved with the customer. And he really jumped me. He said, so outside, you have to protect your time much more than when you're inside, because inside, it gets kind of controlled for you.
Yeah, I would say that, for most inside sales reps, and Corey, I'm taking a leap here. I'm assuming that the customer comes to you, that you're pretty much handling inbound sales calls. This is a different mindset. You're creating the sales opportunity. So you need to figure out what the target market is. I would go to my supervisor and ask about what's the bullseye. And what do I mean by the bullseye? Is literally for most organizations, there's the ideal target, which is the center of the bullseye. There's the good target, which surrounds that center. And then there's the okay market outside of that. Anything that falls in that outer circle and beyond is not somebody you want to call on. So don't just assume you're calling on manufacturing reps. Don't just assume you're calling on physicians. Figure out as much as you can about that target market so you can qualify targets. Mark made such a good point in the fact that you've got to manage your time. And Mark's absolutely right. It's probably the biggest shift from going from inside to outside is you have to remain productive, not busy. And part of that is really understanding who you're calling on so that when you get leads, you can determine who on that lead is qualified and who isn't.
And what that means is that you understand that your role is incremental. See, that this is the whole thing. When you're inside, many times you're taking care of existing customers and you're kind of almost playing a somewhat of a customer service role. You may still be qualifying because in the BDR role that you're in, whatever, but you're still playing a lot of customers. When you're outside, you truly have to be focused on incremental. And what I see happening is many times outside salespeople, well, what they do is I got to go spend time with this existing customer. I got to go have lunch with them. Every Tuesday morning, I had this one time. I was working with a sales rep for a major oil energy services company. Every Tuesday morning, he took Chick-fil-A breakfast to this same company every Tuesday morning. And I'm scratching my head. It says, where's the incremental volume? The only incremental volume was Chick-fil-A getting a breakfast order out of this guy for 20 sandwiches every Tuesday morning. It's incremental.
Yeah, great. Great. We used to call those howdy doody calls.
Oh, yes.
What's the difference between a howdy doody call and a real call? I would also say that you need to study the industry from a different perspective. When you're an inbound sales rep, people are coming to you with their challenges, their problems, their opportunities. Now you're calling on people and you need to create those opportunities. You need to help and guide them to the sale. So you need to really understand the industry. You need to do your research. You need to understand the challenges with it. You need to understand the opportunities so that you can create the questions that will determine a really strong conversation. Again, when you're an inside sales rep, the conversation is being a little bit more dictated to you versus being an outside sales rep.
And inside, your conversations are more one person focused. Outside, you walk into a location or you meet some, and you have the ability to create additional relationships. You have to make sure you're focused on creating those additional relationships because those additional relationships will undoubtedly point you to additional opportunities. I love this comment from Adam. Absolutely. Outside reps need to be more mindful, strategic, results-oriented in balancing their field time versus home office time to be as effective and productive as possible. Hey, Adam, I'm gonna call this out. How many times do you see, Meridith, I know you see this, outside sales reps? Well, they spend all day Monday getting ready to go out. And then they spend all day Friday cleaning everything up. So that means they only really are working 3 days a week. Ew.
Yeah. Corey, I would also say that what you need to do too is figure out what your process is going to be and give yourself the first 3 months to figure that out. So right now, we don't really want to focus on results as much because it's going to take you a while to actually get results. Let's back up and focus on behaviors. You know, how many people do you need to have on your prospect list? How does your prospect list need to be balanced? Is the company going to give you some existing relationships or is what you're going to be doing all new? How are you going to build your center of influence so that you can get referrals in there? And what is a prospect list going to look like? Then how many sales calls are you going to make per day? How many are you going to make per per week? How many proposals do you need to write? How many do you need to win? How many do you need to lose? And how many of your sales calls need to be following up on existing relationships? Getting a feel in that first 3 months of what your process needs to look like to get the results. And I would say every week, sit down on a Friday, take 30 minutes and reflect back on your week and figure out, what did you do behaviorally that really got you to the point you wanted to be? Where did you waste some time? And what do you need to correct for the next week? I would really take this first quarter and basically use it as a learning opportunity.
You said so much there, and it
Mhm.
really is interesting because if you think about it, in an inside sales job, you're measured on a lot of activities, number of phone calls, time on the phone, et cetera, et cetera. Outside, same thing. You still have to be mindful of measuring your activity. Had a call this week with a outside enterprise salesperson. He had just closed a major sale. And we were talking about what's in your pipeline still for the third quarter, what's in for the fourth. And he says, Mark, my pipeline's empty. My pipeline is empty. He had just come into the role a few months ago. And he says, it's taking time because enterprise sales rep, these are all 7 and 8 digit sales he makes, only expected to make a couple a year. And he says, and I said, yeah, what you have to be doing is measuring the activity. What are the accounts you're focusing on? What's your approach? What's your strategy? And you have to be able to go breadth in terms of across the entire prospect company that you're going after, and depth. In other words, develop as meaningful of relationships as possible. But it's going to take you time to fill that pipeline. So when you said 3 months, what's interesting is 3 months is spot on for some outside people.
Yeah.
For some outside salespeople like this enterprise, I said, you know what? It's really going to take you 9 months to fill your pipeline. But then there are others more, I don't want to say transactionally oriented, but lower end. And it may only take you a month to fill a pipeline. You've got to understand what is the right cadence you have to be following. And that's called measuring your activity.
Yeah, absolutely. The other thing I think that you want to really focus on too is, and you may not have used it as much in inbound, is you want to use story telling, and you want to use case studies. So go to your supervisor, your boss, and say, for these groups that I'm calling on, give me some success stories. Give me some wins that we've had, that when I get objections or I need to, underlie how something is going to work, then I'm able to give them real results and real examples of organizations like theirs that we have helped. Everything that you're going to go in and talk about is features and benefits and knowing the product, which is something you already did as an inside sales rep. So I'm assuming your product knowledge is really good. But I find as an outside sales rep, case studies and stories are more important because it's a newer relationship. It's a newer, it's a bit of a heavier lift.
That is so spot on. Again, stay in your lane. Stay in your lane. When I'm working with outside salespeople, I think, hey, who are your existing customers? What do they look like? And stay in that industry. Just because somebody will have a conversation with you or something does not make them a prospect that you should be spending a tremendous amount of time on. I think Jack Hubbard's comment is spot on. One of the behaviors to review at the end of each week might be, what were questions I asked that generated the best opportunities to serve the buyer? And I always ask myself at the end of every day, what did I learn today, and how is that going to help me tomorrow? You have to be continuously evaluating your performance. And again, what I find, big difference between inside and outside. Inside, many times your performance gets evaluated for you. Outside, you have to evaluate yourself. And that's where I kind of find when people make this jump, Corey making the jump from inside to outside, suddenly I feel like all chains have been, released, they can fly, and they begin to lose their way. And you've got to stay structured, because your first 30 days of working outside is going to drive your habits going forward for the next 6 months.
Yeah, I really first learned about the importance of behaviors and actions versus results from Jack Hubbard when he came and worked with our financial institutions. And I got to tell you that, Corey, really pay attention to this and pay attention to this lesson from Jack, because results can make you crazy. I mean, especially as an outside sales rep, and especially in today's marketplace, because you control so little. And going from an inside sales rep to an outside sales rep, my experience is the sales cycle lengthens. And usually the inside sale is a quicker yes or a quicker no. And there's a little more instant gratification, even if that gratification is a negative, at least you know to move on. The outside sale can take a bit longer. You've got to build that rapport. You've got to build that relationship. And so focusing on and understanding the behaviors that work for you. I track behaviors so religiously, and we track those behaviors into results. And I was just looking at my scorecard with my assistant this week, my operations manager, and my close ratio, in my opinion, is too high. Now, you might say that's a little bit crazy. What do you mean you're upset that your close ratio is too high? It tells me I'm not pitching enough, and I'm not pitching at the price point. I can raise my price because I'm closing way too quickly and way too fast right now. It's not where my close ratio should be. So I really want to emphasize, Corey, that as much as I want you to mentor with other successful reps, use this first couple of months to kind of find what works for you. The best sales coach you will ever have is you, analyzing your own behavior and doing exactly what Jack is saying right here. What did I do last week that worked? What got me a result? And learn from that consistently. And don't quit that after the first couple of months. Keep this practice in place.
And I'll tell you, I can't echo that enough. I remember my first outside sales position. Eugene, Oregon is where I was. And Keith Olson, this was the boss who sat me down and ripped me for a trick. But he was adamant about helping me structure my time. But more importantly, he introduced me to Steve. I wish I could remember Steve's last name. Steve was in Salem, Oregon. And Steve and I became very good friends because I leaned on Steve for knowledge. He was my peer mentor who guided me and helped me in understanding how to structure my position, how to be reaching out to accounts, how to make it all happen. And I'll tell you what, without Keith first kicking my rear and really developing my time commitment. And one of the things, this is so funny, but I still go back. He says, Mark, he says, you don't leave your apartment at 8 a.m. At 8 a.m. is when you're making your first physical contact. If you have to be 2 hours away, that means you're leaving your apartment at 6 a.m. And I'll tell you what, he ingrained that into me. And that stuck with me forever because it's the habits you develop. And Steve, I can remember many an evening, I'd call up Steve, how do I handle this? How do I do this? And he guided me through it. He helped me through it. But look to others to guide you. Don't think you can fly on your own. You need the support of others around you.
Yeah, I would also say that, more so than being an inside sales rep, you need to build your reputation in the marketplace here. Like, you're going to be cracking doors. You're going to need to get into the decision makers. And you have heard both Mark and I speak so much about the importance of being well known in the industry. Now, all of a sudden, you are trying to convince people to give you something that is so precious to them, and that's their time. And if they haven't heard of you and they haven't heard about you, then they're not going to give you that appointment. So you need to focus on what do you need to do? Where is your target market going for information? And what do you need to do to get in front of them? So that means you need to learn to shoot videos, you need to write articles, possibly even be a presenter at industry events, but you need to build that reputation.
Yeah, you know what? I love Jack has chimed in with it. We got a great audience this morning.
Yeah.
Jack says, so true, slow down to go fast. Jack, I don't know if you caught, I did an interview the other day with Jay Bear. Jay Bear, great marketing person. We were talking about just this. Sometimes you got to slow down to go fast. And again, what I see is too many times inside people migrate to outside jobs, and they think they can just race forward because they know it all, and they stumble and fall. You've got to slow down to understand the customer, understand the marketplace, understand what your role is. And then ultimately you'll be able to speed up. And it's the same thing every time you approach a customer. You don't just race to the close, you race to understand what are their needs, what are the outcomes that you're going to help them with. That way, then you can begin crafting the right solution for them. Wow, we've done a great job, I think, giving Corey a tremendous amount of ideas. And of course, the topic we're talking about is inside sales and outside sales rep. What are the skills, the support, the success? We've been talking a lot about outside. Should we throw a few ideas on the table for inside?
Sure, go for it.
Well, here's one of the things that I find inside. Inside, you know, it's an emotional game. This is why it's inside. Now, whether or not you're working from a common location or whether or not you're working at home, this is an emotional situation. So again, what I'm going to encourage you to do is you say this, you say, hey, I've always got to start the day on a positive note. Now, some of you are, inside, that means the phone rings, the phone rings, the phone rings. That's fine. But you know what you do? This is a little subtle piece. Take that first minute and pick up the phone and call one of your peers and say, hey, what's on the docket for you today? What's your you lift them up, they lift you up. Why? Because it's going to help you emotionally get ready to do inside sales, because inside sales, I think, is far more emotional than outside.
Interesting. Why is that?
Well, I think because it's the repetition. You're getting calls continuously happening, and so many of them don't go anywhere, whether it be inbound because you're receiving calls, or it's because you are just dialing, prospect and having to make 50, 75, 100 calls. It becomes very tedious, very rote. So as a result, emotional mind games begin to come in. So I feel the inside is more emotional than outside. Again, I could be wrong. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. I think that I love inside sales as a great way to cut your teeth. I mean, I love that Corey is making this transition, because I think if you have done inside sales, you are going to you have a great foundation to begin the outside sales process. I think with inside sales, you have to understand and articulate the problem that much faster, and get to the point of how you can add value to the customer relationship, especially if you are dialing out. Let's assume Mark picks up the phone or he listens to a voicemail. I better be able to tell him in the first 10 seconds how I can add value to his business and why he should even talk to me. Or A, he's not going to answer, B, he's not going to return my call, or C, he's going to hang up on me. So I think you have to get to the point ASAP. I don't find as much rapport building. In fact, rapport building, I find it irritating in the inside sales process.
That is so interesting. If you're doing inside sales, please do yourself a favor. I don't care if the company won't pay for it. Get yourself a good headset, because just as I think people know that I like to talk with my hands. I'm much freer when I'm speaking with my hands. So I'm using AirPods, I'm using a headset whenever I'm on the telephone. Why? Because it allows me to more, I think, connect with the customer. And also, I stand up when I make the vast majority of my phone calls. I'm standing up right now. I spend a lot of the day standing up. Why? Because it helps me to be more in tune, more focused. One other quick thing on inside salespeople. When you're dealing with an inside sales call, don't have other crap on your desk in front of you, because you're not going to be listening. You have got to be laser focused on listening to that customer, what they're saying.
Yeah, I do agree with you that you need to. I love this idea of standing up, because what people are responding to is your energy and your confidence. So if you're an inside sales rep and you're uncomfortable using the telephone and you're a little bit fearful to make outbound calls, first of all, understandable. I think we all start that way. I sure didn't want to pick up the phone, but you need to practice. I don't care if you dial your significant other or, your neighbor all day long, but get to a point where you can shift that confidence, where you're speaking more from your heart and your passion to help that customer than you are speaking from your head. And Mark, that's actually a really great transition to the book.
Oh, yes. Talk about the book, because I was not aware of it until you said, hey, we got to do this book this week.
Yeah, it's called the Outward Mindset by the Arbinger Institute. The only reason I knew of the book is I'm getting ready to do a speaking engagement for a client, and they're all reading this book, and gratefully they wanted me to read it too, which I so appreciate them putting me on the same wavelength. But in essence, the book, The Outward Mindset, is about, as sales professionals, we need to stop focusing on our own goals, and we need to start focusing on the customer and how we can help them. And that sounds so simple, but it is a major energy shift that customers and people feel. If I am calling on Mark and I am worried about making my quota at the end of the month, it does not matter how beautiful and articulate my script is. It doesn't even matter how much I can help Mark. He can feel that my energy is more focused on helping myself than my energy is focused on him. So the Arbinger Institute has written a great book about how to shift that mindset, no matter how fearful you are around your own goals, to really focusing and making sure that the focus is on helping the customer, and how ironically that creates the perfect storm. The best way to grow your organization is to focus on other people.
I love it. Like I said, I just ordered it about 10 minutes before the show began, because I said, I got to read this book. So thank you for adding just one more book to my reading list, which is already too long. Anyway, hey, lightning round. Are you ready?
I am.
Top 10 ways sales leaders can support sales reps who do inside and or outside sales work.
Yeah, number one, I'm going to say recognize that what they need from you is different, and you need to customize your sales leadership approach.
Be clear on the expectations and the KPIs that each person has, because again, they're going to be different inside versus outside.
Sit down with them one-on-one, listen to them make calls or go on a call with them, and offer to lead one and lead by example.
And as you get done with a call, whether it be inside, you might be talking to them, or outside, it might be the curbside review. What you're doing is you're asking them, what went well? What didn't go well? Coach them through and coach them. Okay, what's your next step? What is the next step? And how are we going to handle the next call?
Yeah, be as clear with them on behaviors as you are on results. Help them understand what the process needs to look like in order for them to be successful.
Celebrate the wins. The wins might not be that they're closing sales right now because they're still building their pipeline. So you celebrate the activities, but celebrate. Again, sales, we talked earlier, it's emotional inside. It is still emotional outside, because I can tell you, I spent a lot of time driving a Buick, listening to my windshield talk back to me.
Here's one I learned from Jack Hubbard. Prioritize your coaching sessions and never, ever, ever cancel them. Because when you cancel a coaching session with a sales rep, you send the message that says something else in the organization is more important than they are.
When you start the week, make sure they're clear on what their goals are. They've shared them with you. You share with them what your goals are. And then you loop back with them no later than Thursday mid-morning to see how they're doing on their goals for the week. Why Thursday mid-morning? Because there's still time to make things happen. If you wait till Friday afternoon, the week's over.
Yeah.
I want to check in with them on their goals no later than Thursday mid-morning.
Yeah. Hold them accountable. And what I mean by holding them accountable is don't just make sure that they tick marked what they needed to tick mark, but realize that accountability is an opportunity to figure out if there's skill issues or there's challenges in there. They shouldn't think of accountability as a ruler or a smack they're going to get, but it's an opportunity to sit down with their boss to increase their performance.
Hey, and you know what? Don't just talk about what needs to be done. They need to see you doing what needs to be done. Your own behavior is modeled for them, is going to do more for them than anything. Hey, why don't you share one more? I'll share one more, and we'll close the show down.
Yeah, I would say manage them differently, not only on inside and outside, but based on where they are. Your top performers don't need you micromanaging their results and their, their behaviors. They need you to remove obstacles. They need you to help them get in bigger doors. They're more of a partner to you. Somebody who's just entered your team, it's okay to micromanage them. That's where they are in the process. So adjust your style based on the performance of the sales associate you're managing.
And never pit the inside team versus the outside team, or the outside team versus the inside team. What do I mean by that? By telling the inside team, oh, the outside team is so lousy, or telling the outside team the inside team is so lousy. No, you can competitively lift them up and challenge them. But that's what you do. Never play one off against the other by putting them down. You play one off against each other by lifting them up. Hey, you've been listening to Sales Logic this week, and we want to say thank you for listening. If you like what you hear, hey, you know what? Subscribe, rate, and review the show on your favorite podcast app. If something we've said has earned you a single dollar, consider telling a friend about our show. Because why? It's how we grow when we're able to help you grow. We need reviews on whatever podcast app you're listening to. Hey, I'm Mark Hunter.
And I'm Meridith Elliott Powell.
Remember, when you sell with confidence and integrity,
uncertainty suddenly becomes your competitive advantage.
And the sale becomes logical.
All right. We will see you next week right here at 9 a.m. Eastern. I hope everybody has a safe, really happy Labor Day weekend. And remember, don't take your foot on the gas. It's still a great time to reach out to some of your customers. Have a successful week. Thanks, everybody.